the meeting of the Board of Trustees, which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act as amended. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following. Any person wishing to address the board shall state their name and address. Any person shall be allowed to speak more than once, no person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer trustees' questions. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may extend the amount of time each person is allowed to speak. If a group wishes to address the board, the chairperson may require the group to designate a spokesperson. The Township Board does not respond to comments other than questions by the trustees or to make a necessary clarification. Silence or non-response from the board should not be interpreted as disinterest or disagreement by the board.
All right. First, we'll have a timer that'll be up on the screens for you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Andreessen. I live at 4336 Weatherwood Drive. I'm here tonight to speak on allowing the ADU units, accessory dwelling units. I just want to start off by saying I'm a 23-year-old, single income, and like many people my age, I'm looking for a really realistic way to become more independent and develop more life skills on living on my own. With the current cost of rent and high pricing of housing, to achieve independence, I believe this is the way that I can do that. Over the past 2 years, my family and I have researched several options that would allow me to live independently, but have found very few realistic, affordable ways. After learning about accessory dwelling units, it has become clear they offer a practical and reasonable path forward. ADUs would allow people like me to gain independence while remaining close to family and support. They would also help young adults stay in the Traverse City area rather than having to move away due to housing. Allowing accessory dwelling units would support residents with similar situations, encouraging personal growth, help retain young members of the community who would live, work, and contribute locally. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. When the next person goes up, can they make sure that mic is on? Sorry, I forgot to tell you that.
Chris Cruz, 3016 Collier Road. I agree in principle, and I've participated in the Planning Commission, accessory dwelling units, ad hoc meetings, and that kind of stuff. And I agree in principle with the ADUs. After the last meeting, and points that Dan brought up in the meeting when we had the discussion and it got brought forward, both he and Sherry had some valid points. There were two avenues explored. One was attached, one was detached ADUs. The attached, completely fine with. It's the detached ones that I think that I have a concern with, the way it's written right now. As a detached unit, you take a low-density residential house or property, which is 1 acre minimum. You put a second house on that, and now you put 2 houses on a 1 acre parcel. Essentially, you double the density, and it almost becomes a medium density residential. Now, fast forward in 10 years, somebody wants to sell this property. Now they have 2 houses on it. As a resident, you're going to buy the property, you want to split it, you can't split it because it's not conforming. So if you were able to set that minimum amount of property that the ADU could be built on at 2 acres for a low-density residential, then when it's split, everybody gets a 1 acre and they still maintain conformity with the zoning requirement. That 61 unit over here theoretically could become a 122 unit parcel because all those properties conform to the current zoning ordinance and they could theoretically put another house up on the property. Dan's right. There should be some permitting thing that controls how this happens, so you can keep eyes on what happens to how many we end up having. The other thing, as he said, it's going to increase on current zoning, and it will alter the single-family neighborhood concept because now you're going to have a second parcel on that. As I mentioned about the selling issue, the other thing too we had discussed and there was a debate back and forth was 30 days versus 90 days, and 30 days being the minimum. At least trying to stick it at 90 days might be a little bit helpful. The other one that I didn't understand was how would you have conservation recreational properties and put an ADU on that? That didn't make a whole lot of sense why you'd have conservation piece there. Okay.
All right, thank you. Cody, is that mic on?
Is that working? Whoops. Is See if I can
Yes, it
figure
is.
this out. Okay, hi. Dennis Wyan, 2932 Crescent Shores Drive. I've been involved, I'm on the Planning Commission with the ADU issue. I've heard there's discussion possibly of limiting it to attached only. There may be some merit to that. There's a lot of concerns, considerations that we should look at. But when you get into larger parcels, and I happen to have a larger parcel, and I'll be transparent, I'm considering an ADU for when I get older than I already am. It doesn't make sense on larger parcels to not allow detached. It's not a good use of land. To crowd, I know there's people here that have multiple acres that were interested in ADUs, 5, 10 acres and that. As I said myself, I have almost 2.5. It's just not a good use of land to build something crowded on another one. So that's my point on that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Lloyd Morris, 8178 Barney Road. As Dennis said, there are several, at least 3 to 4, probably more if we really looked into it, properties in this township that are 5 or more acres, and you're limiting, like with my personal experience or problem is I have 10 acres of ag, which if I could divide it, I could put 5 houses on. But since it's a non-conforming parcel, I can't do anything with it. But if I could put, say, 1 ADU for every 2 acres, then I could do something with that 10 acres other than put up a pig farm. Thank you.
Tina Allen, 10120 Deer Path South. Hi, everybody. I said I hate to say this, but I kind of agree with Dan. So I've also been sitting with, listening to the accessory dwelling unit discussions for, not for the whole length, but some of the time. I think the Planning Commission did some really, really good work here, but there's still more to be done. Everybody kind of said some different things that maybe would make some more sense. There's just square footage issues, and if I had a basement I have a 1,200 square foot house, and I want to put one in my basement, it's limited to 960. What am I supposed to do with that oddball amount? So I think there's just some little things like that. I also believe very strongly that it should only be allowed in certain, either certain districts or certain acreage. So I have lots of ideas how we can do that. So I'd like to see the Planning Commission continue that discussion so we can kind of hammer out some of those things. And then the other thing is I just want to say I'm really, really, having worked in housing and homelessness for the last 10 to 15 years, I am very much in favor of the poverty tax exemption that you'll talk about later too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pete Springsteen, 3929 Cedar Lake Road. I agree with a lot of what Tina said. I think there's still some more work to be done. I am, though, in favor of ADUs generally, but I think the idea about property size and how it might meet zoning if it wasn't an ADU makes a lot of sense, as Chris was talking about. To, take a 1 acre parcel and put 2 pieces of property on it when it wouldn't otherwise be zoned for it is a challenge, I think. I have a personal bias also. I have a large parcel, almost 100 acres, and like Dennis, I'm not getting younger either, and I think eventually, I have one of my kids who would be willing to live in my house, I think, and I would want a smaller house somewhere on the property. I grew up in a small farming community where not most, but many of the farmers had the big house and little house, where Grandma and Grandpa lived here and the next generation lived there, and it just kept moving along. And I think that's a reasonable thing for bigger parcels. And that's a personal bias, so I don't want to put that in play too much, because I think that's not necessarily the role of what you're trying to decide. But I think that, as Tina said, this probably does need more work, but I would consider that ADUs are an appropriate thing to work towards. Given that our Senator Slotkin has introduced a bill in Congress, which doesn't have any support yet, that will require communities to do things like this. And I think if we have something in place that meets our needs, if Congress does eventually go forward at that on a federal level, she's advocating a national emergency for housing. She doesn't have much support. She's a Democrat. I don't think there's much chance of it passing the Senate, but those conversations get started and they continue. I think it would benefit us to have something in place regarding ADUs that's supported by our community. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Bob Vershave, 8037 Maple Leaf Drive. I am on the Planning Commission. I've worked through the ADU topic. I do want to add one other, besides that, go back and offer one other comment to thank you for your partnership and participation with the Road Commission in repairing Barney Road this fall. I've lived in the township for 22 years. I know Lloyd lives right down that road too, and that road has been needing repairs for all those years, so we greatly appreciate it and thank you. To speak to the ADU topic, I just wanted to kind of reiterate what I've heard tonight. We've heard that at the Planning Commission before. I want to take the board's discussion and opinions in. I think we are willing and able to go back and continue working on it. I respect Dan's opinion and work on the subject. He was kind of new to the topic as we were wrapping it up at our level or moving it along. Kevin worked on it a bit or before that, so I just want to reiterate we're here to continue working. I do, however, object to the characterization that it was irresponsible and reckless proposal that's out there. I think it's something that's needed in the community. We've heard from the public on the matter. There's been lots of support for it. The master plan strongly supports it. Cody had a memo he prepared that you've all seen that I think really well walked you through all the different issues with it. So just we're here to continue the conversation and get something that works for the community. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Any other public comment? All right.
Right here, Ron.
Oh,
Do I have to come up there?
as long as you speak loud enough, I'll let you sit there.
Thank you.
I can take you the mic too if you want it.
I don't need my. Bill Shear, 9777 Skyler Road. I see on our new business, we've got a thing on there for tree removal at Twin Lakes. One would hope, but I don't think it can be done because we're such a small area, that it'd be kind of transparent on who has had these people done work for themselves personally. If that's the case, then maybe they ought to recuse themselves from discussion on this project. But maybe it can't be done. But I hope it's very transparent on how this bid is going to be awarded to whomever, because there are a lot of different guys now up here cutting trees. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any other public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll go on to consent calendar.
Tonight, the consent calendar consists of the Township Board meeting minutes of December 9, 2025, the Township Special Meeting Study Session minutes of December 23, 2025, the Treasurer's Report as of November 30th, 25, and then we have December reports from the Treasurer's Office, the Planner's Office, the Zoning Office, Enforcement Officer, Parks Department, we have the check register as of December 25. Grand Traverse County Sheriff's Report, December 25. Grand Traverse County Road Commission, December 25. And the Assessor's Fourth Quarter Report, 2025.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'd make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Support. All right, we have a motion by Kevin, support by Dwayne. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. Then we have approve and amend the agenda. I do have one change. I'd like to change new business 1 and make it 1A for tree removal and 1B for the timbers rental flooring. Because we had renters move out, we have to change those floorings after 11 years.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda with 1B being the timbers floor.
Support.
All right, motion by Rhonda, support by Kendra. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Any conflict of interest on the agenda today?
Well, I personally have had A1 tree service at our home a couple of times, so do you need me to excuse myself when we come to that discussion?
Depends if you're getting any financial benefit out of it, because
No, not
I've
at
also
all.
had them do mine, but they've also been doing our trees for probably 15
Okay.
years.
I didn't,
So,
thank you for that suggestion, I wouldn't have thought of it.
but thank you. All right, hearing no more, then we'll move on to special reports. Commissioner Morris, seems like I haven't heard from you in a while.
Well, the phone works both ways.
I know. Sometimes that's a good thing.
I know, no news is good news, right? Okay, so honestly, I don't have a whole lot to report. We just kicked off our new year with our organizational meeting, basically second verse, same as the first. Made a couple of tweaks in our board policies, but our last meeting, we reestablished the ad hoc committees for 2026, and the TIF pilot in Brownfield, as well as the animal control ad hoc, which I'm a part of. And we had a closed session about the chain of lakes dams, which I can't tell you about. But does anybody have any questions for me?
I feel sorry for the people who have to pay that if it's a special assessment and it's used by so many people. So the lakes don't belong just to the people that live on it, the lakes belong to everybody. And that's something that should be looked at when they do that. Whether they come up with a user fee or the counties just pay some of it as part of their cost. But I think it's shameful that just the residents have to pay for it to live on the lake because they get that pleasure of living on the lake.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns? Alrighty then.
All right, thank you, Penny.
Penny.
All right, Chief Down. You guys been busy.
Busy. Hello, good evening all. First, I want to start out by saying happy 10-year anniversary to Long Lake Fire Rescue. We just crossed over that 10-year mark. You folks did that big decision 10 years ago. We've made a lot of changes from the organization that once was to what we have today. So I know that myself and the staff are very proud, and hopefully we keep that up with you folks. Kind of like Ron just said, yeah, it's been a crazy winter for us on the fire side. We've been having fires left and right. We had the one right across Ron's driveway not too long ago. So, and we've been widespread. We've been everywhere from Glen Lake to Blair to Green Lake, and so I guess that's the downfall for early winters that type of stuff happens. Some exciting news: paramedic firefighter Ian Duran is expecting his baby, and its due date is Thursday. So we're waiting by the phone to see when that occurs, and obviously we always like to enjoy bringing new ones to the group. So I will be doing a presentation to the Leadership Grand Traverse. I graduated from these folks just a year ago, and they asked me to come back and do a presentation about fire service. So I'm looking forward to that. That'll be here at the end of the month. We did the end of the year data. So kind of, again, go back to, dug up the data from the rural days, the last rural days. 2015, there was 384 calls,
Would you have that up there?
Long Lake Rural had at that point. Should be the last page ultimate is what I'll be reading off of. And so this year, obviously, we finished with 935 calls, which is up 21% from our last year at 776, I think it was. So again, a major increase. Obviously, the bulk of our calls still continue to be EMS, 687, aka 73% of our calls. EMS, 248, fire. And it's, the business is always growing. Some of the data that you were looking for, Kev, hopefully we can, if you want to sit down and talk at any point in time, but yeah, it's kind of the annual report's all there. Any questions for me?
I appreciate the additional data and outlining what we're doing in terms of the aid summary and those pieces. So, yeah, I think at some point more conversation would be prudent. So thank you for all the effort and the detail.
It's not so much mutual.
Exactly. About 4-1, a little more than 4-1.
Yeah. So we'll be sharing these numbers. This is what I was waiting for. So I have talked to a couple different townships in the city to see if we can set up something up because we're now responding in those areas with our taxpayers funded ambulance and fire trucks. And that's not how it was originally designed. And but if they were coming to our area just as much, then it's mutual. But we'll go from there. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Appreciate it, Chief.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
All right. We'll go on to the tree removal at Twin Lakes.
What about Sean?
Oh, geez, I forgot.
He's here.
You are on my list, aren't you, Sean? Andy did such a great job,
I guess I'm
You gotta come
easily forgettable, I guess.
Yeah, I know. Just so everybody's aware of it, Sean has now moved down to the emergency service station.
I guess I can take that off the list to talk about today.
And, so we do miss him around here, so I must have forgot you already. I
all right.
apologize for that.
Folks, I'm now at the fire station. All right, so unfortunately, I don't have percentages, but last year I responded to 573 calls for service in Long Lake Township. I responded to 64 calls since the last township meeting. This is where I would then talk about how my new office is at the fire station, but I guess I can skip over that. In the past month, I did 2 fraud presentations totaling about 100 people that received the training. I also trained a new deputy in how to do the fraud presentations, and so she's going to be taking over a lot of the Garfield locations I was. So I just want to reiterate to everybody here, if you have a group in Long Lake or anything like that and you would want this fraud presentation, it takes about an hour. I have an open schedule and I would be happy to talk about fraud if it can prevent future victims of it.
Sean, not to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but that might be something that you can get with Sarah. She has a lot of the associations.
That'd be
Contact.
fantastic. Yeah.
And then it might be something you give up together.
Perfect.
So-
And then the only last thing I have on here, before any questions, would be now that people are leaving for the season, now that the holidays are over, I am doing the winter property checks for the people that have left out of town. I'll go check your doors, make sure everything's in order. So if you or somebody you know wants their property checked when they are gone, just give me a call. I'll ask some basic info and add to my list.
It was interesting that the sheriff department report how many arrests have been made in Long Lake Township.
Oh, they reported that?
Yeah, that was in that sheet that's
Oh.
back there.
That would have been nice for me to have, but that's okay.
They don't give you that, Sean?
No, God, no.
But you're in a different office, so how?
I'm in a different office
There you
now.
go.
I'm not sure if you're aware of that. I'm now at the fire station.
Here,
That's right, that's right.
I'll show you, Sean. I'm not going to normally go back to these numbers, but 63, I'm almost there. So if you look at that, you got Long Lake with criminal arrests, 25, and, it's kind of interesting seeing some of those numbers that are actually happening right here in Long Lake Township.
Yeah, for sure.
So, it's
Thank
not
you,
the
folks.
Same, not the same little township.
No, this area is growing. All of Traverse City, all of Grand Traverse is obviously growing. So as long as we can keep those numbers away from Garfield's, which was 1,000 some, I think we're going to be okay, though. So, yes, sir.
I have one question for you. Fraud training, can you give just a very short synopsis? And what kind of fraud, what is it that you're,
Yeah,
What is-
yeah,
what do you
absolutely.
focus on?
So basically, it's like an open discussion. So I discuss the 10 most common frauds that we see here in Grand Traverse County, basically how you can identify it as a fraud, and basically to prevent people from falling victims to scams or other things like that. So like I said, it's an open discussion. I talk back and forth of experiences that I have, experiences that they have, and if one person can, if I can just prevent one person from being a victim, then I've done my job.
so individual frauds as opposed to business?
Exactly.
Focus, okay.
Yep, we only focus on basically the most common ones, individual fraud, and scams and stuff like that.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks,
Be at the
Sean.
fire station if you need me.
He's got a new gig. All right, we have no pending business, so we'll go on to new business. Is that okay now? And so we have tree removal, Twin Lakes. Unfortunately, Oak Wilt still continues to move forward down there. So we have this couple trees to take out, and it's $8,000. At least the hill's starting to grow back up where it took them out last time.
So Ron, on this proposal, do we send that out for bid, or is just the one recommendation?
Yeah, we usually have one come back, but they've been the lower ones. Have to make sure you
I
get
know
those. Yeah, we do
historically.
have other bids that do it, so.
Okay,
And A1s, they've been really good about what their pricing is, and so.
very good. Just in future, I mean, does it make sense if this goes into the record for future, I'd be taking
Yeah.
out 1 tree or 100 trees? What are we taking? I mean, you're not getting 100.
Well, there's one big one,
Yeah.
and then the rest are some smaller trees around it, but I can put the numbers on it going forward.
Yeah, that'd be,
Okay.
just to have some idea and something tying to it. I would make a motion. I'll make a motion to accept the proposal for A1 tree services as presented.
Support.
All right, motion by Kevin, support by Kendra. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion passes. The next one is, you have 2 quotes in front of you for the Timbers rental. We've had a renter in there for 11 years, and I was hoping the carpet would be good, but after they moved some of the furniture out, it wasn't so good. So the goal is to put LVT in throughout the house. We have 2 quotes. They're pretty clear. They're close. One from Bayview Flooring, the other one from Bodemer Brothers. The one for Bayview for the 17,931 does not include the foyer, which is ceramic tile, and it's not that good, but we could leave it if we needed to. But to take the ceramic out and put LVT through that whole area would be $19,402.87. And then Bodemer Brother, and the other difference between Bayview would simply leave all the cove base in and just put the cord around all the way around. That was their quote. And then Bodemer's, if we leave the entrance tile, I think both of them are removing the entrance tile. What was the difference? I can't remember what that was. Oh, the difference were the different in the flooring. So one was just a thicker color or thicker, higher end flooring, and that was one I would recommend, but they come in at $16,473.10, and they would actually cut all the paint along all the cove base, take the cove base off, and then put the floor down and put the cove base back on. So. And we do have a potential renter for this, and the rent will be for this place will be $2,400 a month. It's almost 4-bedroom, full basement, 2-car garage. And all the plowing, mowing, all that's included in it, done by the Timbers.
What's the current rent on that one?
1,400.
$1,400.
And
So the renter had been there for a long time. It started out at $500.
Sure. So just for the public, so we're going from 1,400 to 2,400 in rent, and it's been 10 years with one renter and no flooring ever replaced or taken care of during that time. And we're also getting it painted for the first time in that many years.
Correct. Yep. It was nice, they raised 9 kids in the house. It was pretty good. I was shocked at how clean it was.
I'll make a motion to approve the Bodoma Brothers flooring at $16,473.10.
I'll support.
All right, motion by Kendra, support by Dwayne. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. All right, next up is our audit, which is Dennis and Gartland. They've been doing it for a while. This is our engagement letter. Their cost of this one is going to be $28,300, and the plan is to do it the week before, the week in April, right? Is that when it was?
It was the week right after MTA.
Yeah, which is a little earlier. Normally it starts in May and goes through May, so, because we have to have it done by June to get it to the state.
I'll make a motion to approve the DG&N Charter Township of Long Lake engagement letter at $28,300.
All right, motion by Kendra, support by Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. All right. Next we have Angela. You want to come up, anybody go over all this we have, this is the resolution for establishing poverty exemption income guidelines and asset test policy, resolution number 1261.
Scroll
This is
down.
our third poverty exemption.
Ron.
106.
Are you ready for me to speak?
Sorry. There you go.
This is our third poverty exemption resolution. The state of Michigan, throughout the years, will make changes that require us to change our resolutions and our guidelines to fit with new state law. In this situation, it wasn't a lot of changes, actually. The primary thing is that they gave us a better list of what's considered income, what's considered assets, when we are doing poverty exemptions, which we tend to have at least one every single year, and we've had probably at most 3 in any given year. So we expanded the income and asset areas, cleaned up some of the older language. The other thing is that you used to be able to just kind of like fill out a form and say nothing's changed. Then you didn't have to go back in front of the board of review every year for the poverty exemption, and the state has eliminated that. We pretty much had everybody would just come in every year anyway and just refile anyway. We never really worked with that, but it was an option. It's no longer an option at the state, so that is no longer part of our guidelines as well. So it's really just a matter of, this is nothing new, and we didn't change any of the, so it's the federal poverty guidelines. If you meet the federal poverty guidelines, you have assets less than $30,000, then you get 100% tax break. So, and you have to file annually. So, and that $30,000 would be like if you have a fishing boat and it's $40,000, then you have to sell the fishing boat to pay your taxes. So you can have a single car, you can have household furnishings, but if you have savings accounts, pensions, coin collections, gun collections, antiques, boats, a second vehicle, anything that adds up to more than 30, then you would not qualify to get a poverty exemption. Plus, your income has to be at federal poverty guidelines, and it includes a bunch of different incomes. I think we have been always counting the appropriate income, but they just did a better kind of a bulletin point of these are what things are income and these are what things are considered assets. So that definitely got beefed up in this third resolution since I've been here. So.
And you say we've had 1 to 4 on given years of,
I would say 3 is probably the most we've ever had in any given year. And a lot of times it's the same person, because, you know, unless something happens to them, they sell or die or something like that, then they tend to qualify year after year after year.
Do you find that the federal poverty guidelines change? I mean, the levels change
It
in the
changes
amount?
every single year.
Every year?
We receive that through the
Does it go up or down?
It goes up every year.
Okay, okay, that's good.
Still,
Mhm.
we tight to live on.
Yeah.
But, so if you're a household of 4, there's an income level for that 4, but all 4 people. So again, if you rent out a room to somebody, their income counts, 2 people household and their income counts. So usually there's single people, there's single older people who don't even have close to $30,000 worth of assets off to the side either. They have nothing off to the side, typically, a couple thousand in the bank or something.
with the eligibility requirements listed, we have some flexibility as a local government entity to adjust that, or is that given to us by the state or the federal government?
We can choose our own income level, but they can't be below the federal poverty guidelines. We have always used the federal poverty guidelines.
And I guess I was referencing the other eligibility items in section D, where there's a list of requirements.
No, whatever is listed in that requirements, those are part of the state law, and they have to provide it. They have to provide us with everything in that. There's no change.
No change. And I guess my question is whether it would be appropriate, not appropriate, or in consideration, you know, there's nothing there to be even a U.S. citizen. Should that be a part of?
Actually, I think that is in there somewhere.
Requires a driver's license, but.
Oh, okay.
But that
You have
would.
to own, it has to be your primary residence, you have to own the home. I guess, I thought it said U.S. citizen in there, but this, a bunch of this is directly from the state, you know, they supply it. But I can certainly investigate if U.S. citizenship, because it has to be your primary residence. In order to be your primary residence, you must be a Michigan resident, driver's license, voter registration.
But you could do all.
Probably is, you know, we haven't had anybody that isn't a U.S. citizen apply, but I can certainly check into that. But my feeling is that if it's not in there, then it probably isn't a requirement by the state. If it's not a requirement by the state, we definitely can't add that.
Oh, okay, I guess that was my
Okay,
first question. So I'd be curious just to see, know, and understand, just to, yeah. I mean, I think it's a good program, but
Yeah.
that would be an interesting qualification.
Like I said, we have a little over 5,000 parcels in this township. You know, usually it's one, and it's the same, you know, like Barb did it for several years, and then she died, and now this guy's doing it for a few years, and if he sells or dies, or,
Sure.
you know.
Yeah, if we can just, I'd be interested to know that,
Yeah,
answer that question.
I'll probably just communicate it to you directly, or just maybe Ron can bring it up to the state, but.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
Yep, I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 1261, the resolution establishing the poverty exemption income guidelines and asset test policy.
I'll support.
All right, motion by Rhonda, support by Linda. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Wheelock,
Yes.
Robinson,
Yes.
Siebert,
Yes.
Balderak,
Yes.
Schaub,
Yes.
Wagner,
Yes.
Lempool.
Yes. Motion passes. All right, Planning Commission appointments. It's always fun to go through that process. A couple things that are going to change for my appointments. One, I want to reappoint Max Bott for the next 3 years for what he's done there. And then the next appointment would be Peter Springsteen, which is the gentleman right here. Comes from a lot of years of board experience and lives in the community and has been very active with different things that have happened within our community over the last several years. And then, so I want to appoint him into Sherry Murphy's spot. And then the other one is that Tim and I spoke the other day, and he's going to Tim Fergura, he's been on the board for a while, so he's going to step off, and then I want to appoint Tina Allen. Tina Allen's sitting up here in the front row. And so she'll finish out his 1 year, he's got 1 year left on his term. And then Tina comes with a lot of
board experience. She helped us out with our shoreline and did that. She's also been an elected official here in our community for a long time, 3 terms?
13 years.
Yeah, so, yep. And then she was on the planning commission as well, so. So those are the 3 positions that I'd like to appoint for the next, one for the, finish up 1 more year, and the other one through 3 years. Okay?
I'll make a motion to approve your slate.
Okay.
As presented, Max Bott, Peter Springsteen, and Tina Allen.
I'll support that.
All right, so a motion by Kevin, support by Dan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion passes. All right, next one we have. Oops, went past it. So now we have this one, proposed road name change. We have, it was Skyvale, and so now it's going to be Fireside, which is the road right next to the emergency service station. So he's changing the name over there, so. So that's all been through Grand Traverse County and everything, so. So now they can go home and have fireside chats.
Yeah.
So,
I'll make a motion to approve the new name road Fireside Trail.
I'll support.
all right, we have support by Rhonda, or motion by Rhonda, support by Kendra. I had Kendra first, maybe my right ear is a lot better. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Opposed, motion passes. All right, so now we'll go into housekeeping amendments. So Cody, these are all yours. You got to tell me how to drive this.
All right. So I think this is the first zoning ordinance amendment that I'm bringing forward to you folks. So just kind of orient you in how I've been presenting data, and if you want something different in the future, please let me know, because sometimes these can get awfully large and complex. First one, luckily, is not as complex as the next. So the first one is, how I set it up is I always put a brief procedural synopsis. I call it an insert that allows both you guys and residents to see what's going on. That's the first page here that will tell you an overview of the possible actions that you guys have per state statute, and then any attachments that I include along with the packet. So for the housekeeping, what this is staff is going to get in the routine of, on a yearly cadence, bring forth grammatical or language that needs to be clarified in the zoning ordinance to the planning commission. That's not going to change anything in substance, but is going to, correct spelling errors or fix numbering, those kind of things, hence the housekeeping nomenclature. So that goes through and explains, the planning commission reviewed this on December 2nd. They passed a resolution to recommend adopting this draft language to you folks. And then the possible actions you all have is either to adopt the amendment as amended. If you choose to amend something, you can deny the adoption of the amendment, or you can postpone your decision. There's actually a 5th option, which would be to send it back to the planning commission. I forgot to add it to this one. Luckily, this is pretty straightforward, so hopefully we can get through it. Attachments that come along with this are a memo from the planning department dated January 6th, the resolution the planning commission passed, and then the actual draft language for the housekeeping. So, like I mentioned, the memo is just me going through, trying to further clarify what is being presented here. All of these items are either grammatical, spelling, or numbering issues, except for one, which would be to add the word minimum in front of a setback so that we understand that the setback is a minimum and not an exact setback. It's kind of nitpicky, but it makes a huge difference in practice. So if we could, real quick, just look at the draft, I can walk you through the changes. Anything in yellow would be something added or subtracted. So in section 4.6, there's yellow. The last ordinance amendment that happened, we didn't happen to put the date that it was adopted inside, so we need to add that. If it's blue, it's a numbering issue. Microsoft Word didn't allow me to highlight every number in blue for some reason. I need to get up on my Microsoft Office skills. So section 4.16 is the numbering. They're correct in your draft proposal. Same with 4.17, that numbering was incorrect in the current zoning ordinance. In the draft, it's reflected corrected. So the numbers are numerical and sequential.
Section 14.2, when the district regulation cheat sheet on the front was composed, there was a missed carryover. You'll see that this is for high-density residential, and it gives a waterside setback. There's not waterside setback in high-density because they're not along the water. So it goes through and shows those corrections there. Section 18.2, under development options, we had missed adding the hamlet development option when that item was added in 2019, so that needs to be added. And then the only word that we're adding with substance to it is under section 19.17.3A, if you can follow along, sorry, it's the zoning ordinance. Adding the word minimum to 15-foot setback. Otherwise, the way that it's currently being interpreted by our zoning administrator is when it says have a 15-foot setback, you have to have a 15-foot setback, not 16, not 18, it has to be 15. So by adding the word minimum, we would treat it like any other setback we do, where it's a minimum regulation. You can go further back if the property owner so chooses. Section 1928, the word occupation had a space in it. And section 22.3, we added the words as amended to the township road ordinance, because if we didn't, then any changes that we make to the road ordinance doesn't get adopted, then that section, that's pretty standard language to add. And then section 22.2, again, came into a numbering issue. As much as I would like to fix those anytime staff sees them. State statutes requires that we go to the planning commission, then you folks to get approval to do so. So that's what's in front of you in the housekeeping. Is there any questions? I know I went through that relatively quickly, but happy to answer anything.
So you have to bring it to the planning commission and then to us to approve?
Yep, if I want to change a period in the
spelling
zoning ordinance, I have to bring it in front of 13 people.
Having come from the planning commission, this is just a little scratch on the surface of what needs to be fixed in here yet, too.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep housekeeping items to non-controversial or substantial. They are strictly clarification language or strictly grammatical. It's just to try to make sure that our zoning ordinance doesn't have glaring issues like that. Or circular reference issues, where if you look in one place, it says this setback, or this place says a different. We want to make sure it's all congruent.
Sure.
Cody, is it resolution 1225-4 or 22?
The resolution number that was passed is 122525. The zoning ordinance amendment number is 122504. Did I put it in there wrong somewhere? Because it's very possible.
It's a housekeeping issue.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's confusing because go ahead.
You're talking about the one from the planning commission that did, not the one for today?
So are we doing a separate resolution?
The planning commission has to pass a resolution. You folks don't. You can do it by a voice majority.
We just do it by a vote.
Mhm.
Yep. Okay.
Just like they have to hold a public hearing, so we actually had to hold public comment for
Right.
non-substantial. It's just the way that the procedure works.
But it says we're going to pass so we're just passing the ZOA's 122504s, correct?
Yes, if you choose to pass the housekeeping amendment, you'd be
If that's
passing
what
zoning ordinance amendment number 122504, correct?
I'll make a motion that we approve zoning ordinance amendment 12-25-04 to address housekeeping issues.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Dan, supported by Kevin. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Do I have to roll call?
Yes. No.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, motion passes. All right, now we'll go on to the ZOA 9092503 Assessor Dwelling Units packet.
All right, so again, you'll see I included that insert sheet that goes over the overview. ZOA 092503 was the result of a multi-month effort by the Planning Commission, including holding 2 ad hoc committee meetings with 3 commissioners on the panel, as well as input from the public and industry experts for ADUs. Out of that ad hoc committee, the Planning Commission members there recommended a ZOA 032501 that was put before the Planning Commission earlier last spring in March. After
review, the planning commission decided that they would like to make some amendments, and I felt it was enough change from the original ZOA that we needed to come up with a new ZOA number, so that's why they took 6 months and made the changes they desired to get the new ZOA 092503. So the draft that you guys have in your packet is the most up-to-date from the planning commission. They held a public hearing on September 23rd, 2025, and they passed resolution 092515 recommending adoption of the draft ordinance to you folks. Again, your options are the same. Adopt as amended, deny adoption, or refer changes back to the planning commission, or you could postpone a decision until a later time. There's 7 attachments that I've given you today. Memo from the planning department, the actual draft language, the resolution passed by the planning commission, and then the following were some of the tools that the planning commission used to get to their current draft language, which is our zoning district map, our master plan. I took an excerpt instead of giving you all 100 and some odd pages. An analysis that was derived from the planning department called neighboring community analysis, accessory dwelling unit analysis that was done in October of 24. And then we also did an analysis on minimum lot area by district, which we did in July of this past year. Throughout my memo, I understand it's 5 pages, and I apologize for the extra reading, but what I'm trying to do is communicate to you folks and the public kind of the background as well as the proposal, and then any considerations you guys should use while making your decisions. So for those that aren't aware of what an ADU is, it's a smaller self-contained residential unit that's located on a lot with an existing principal dwelling unit. It's almost always subservient in size or style or access, those types of things. They also are called granny flats or in-law suites or backyard cottages, secondary units. They kind of get tossed around like that. Common uses of ADUs are for, I always go back to the 20-somethings or the 80-somethings that need a place to live either with family or near family because of either housing costs or the desire to do so. Key characteristics, like I mentioned previously, is it's subservient to the principal dwelling unit. So it's always going to be, you're not going to be allowed to build an ADU on a property that doesn't have a principal dwelling. It would have to have the principal dwelling first. This tool, this land use policy tool, has been utilized by communities kind of all over the U.S. to bring that to light to the planning commission. The planning department made the neighboring community analysis where it shows the neighboring communities that have ADUs and what the regulations are on that. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but I just wanted to touch on the tool that's being used around the area. So the summary of the proposal that's being put in front of you, and forgive me for just reciting what's on the paper, but it's sometimes easier than me rambling. The ordinance amendment, if adopted, would establish regulations allowing ADUs in the township and expand housing options while supporting neighborhood compatibility. If this draft language is adopted, ADUs will be permitted on lots meeting minimum zoning size and that already contain an existing single-family dwelling. It's subject to approval of a land use permit. The language specifies that only one ADU would be allowed per lot. The owner would have to reside in either their primary dwelling or the ADU. The ADU would be required to be attached to the principal dwelling or detached, be connected to suitable water and wastewater systems per the county health department, and subject to the standard permitting and site plan reviews we do in our normal permitted uses. The ordinance would prohibit short-term rentals on properties with ADU uses, that includes the primary dwelling and the ADU, unless a valid license is currently being held. After speaking with our ordinance enforcement office, there may be at max 2 properties in the township that have a current short-term rental license that would be allowed to continue their short-term rental even though they have an existing non-conforming ADU or similar definition already on the parcel. But anybody new coming to us, if they decided to build an ADU, you'd basically be forfeiting your right to do an STR. There also is design standards including compatible architecture, minimum floor size, and minimum living area. So we have in most of our districts, like we have to have either a 24 by 24 core living area or 20 by 20 core living area, so it would also incorporate that.
The things that we ask you to consider when reviewing this is understanding there is regional housing pressures. There's folks that call it a housing crisis, there's folks that call it, there are hundreds of names that people like to use for it. But the long story short is, housing in Grand Traverse County in northern Michigan is getting pressure from all different sides. Housing prices are increasing, rents increasing, and one of the tools that communities are using to try to affect that is an ADU. The other considerations are understanding that things like, the way I kind of coach the Planning Commission is understanding that things are on a spectrum. If you want to think of a sound switchboard where there's sliders, that's a good illustration of it. But ADU requirements, they could be small, like 200 square feet. They could be large, like 1,200 square feet. There's kind of a slider of where we're trying to hone these things in. Same thing with permitted uses versus conditional use, or lot size that's correct, or in some districts, but not all. So when we were working through this process with the Planning Commission, they worked through to try to hone in what they thought might be the best option moving forward. So just kind of keep that in mind. So ADU requirements, we'll go through those here shortly. Just a little background, currently the township offers 4 different housing types. There's 3 which people are probably most commonly understand are single-family dwelling unit, 2-family, and anything above 2-family, so single, duplex, tri, quad, or a big apartment complex. We also allow a use called an accessory dwelling unit to a commercial use. It's only allowed in a few small districts. I think it's only allowed in local business, if I remember off the top of my head. And it's very restrictive. Basically what it allows is if somebody owned a business in the township, we would allow them to build a residence on the back side of it. You have to own the business in order to reside there, and it has to be relatively small. I believe it's under 960, if I remember right. So it's very tightly controlled. So those are the 4 housing types we currently use. They are allowed in different districts as you would expect. So low-density residential doesn't allow duplexes or tris or quads, whereas high-density allows for those things. So that, again, that sliding scale that I've been talking about. The other things to consider are permitted versus conditional uses. For those that haven't been around the zoning in a while, a permitted use is an applicant comes in, fills out an application to our zoning administrator to make sure it meets all the criteria in our zoning ordinance. Our zoning administrator can issue them a permit. So single-family residential home, that's a permitted use in almost every single district. They have to provide proof of making sure they meet all the check boxes. Matt will give them a check and issue them a permit. A conditional use is actually called a special use permit at the state level, but it requires that an applicant comes in, follow a different procedure that then goes to the Planning Commission for review. So there's 2 types of uses we can do. That is a little more burdensome for the applicant, but those are things like site condominiums or subdivisions go through that process that need a little more scrutiny. And those permitted and conditional uses can be tailored to the specific zoning district. So if you have duplex as a permitted use in high density, but it's a permitted use in high density, but it's a conditional use in medium density. So depending on which districts best suit that use, you can kind of, again, play with that slider to make sure it works. That ties into my next consideration, which is zoning districts. We have 9 current zoning districts, and I'll show you that on our zoning map as we go through kind of the information provided. And then the master plan outlines, the master plan is kind of like my to-do list. There's a big section, Chapter 9, that talks about implementation. And so if we ever get to the point where the Planning Commission is low on agenda items, the first thing we do is we take a look at the master plan. The next item up in the Phase 1A or Phase 1B or Phase 2, we grab an item off of that, start working on that. So that's why ADUs has come up, and I list there where I found the appropriate references. And then I just wanted to take a second also for recognition and dispel some misconceptions. First is, with the housing pressures of Grand Traverse County, if Long Lake Township decides to adopt ADUs, we're not going to solve housing pressure. Housing systems are regional, housing control is local, so we get to control our 36 square miles, that's it. But housing systems are across jurisdictions. So we might alleviate, we might help, it might not. It's not kosher to say that it's going to fix everything. On the opposite side, the concept of it doubling density across the township as a whole is also incorrect. So we'll look at it here in a second. There's an analysis saying how many parcels are eligible just on lot size alone. But ADUs have a cost to them. They have a cost not only to build them, but if you add a bedroom to a residence, regardless of if it's a permitted use or conditional use, we still check with the health department to make sure that septic can handle it and that water can handle it. So the last thing we want is to add a fourth bedroom to a 3-bedroom house and then not have the septic be able to handle it. So whenever that comes through, Matt takes that up with the health department and makes sure that anything that's trying to be added to is adequate sewage, which can be costly if you have to upgrade that. And then there's just flat out resident desire. I don't want an ADU at my home. I'm sure some of you probably don't, some of you probably do. So it's a wide spectrum. So just a blanket statement of double density is not true, but yes, it could add double density in some areas on single parcel to parcel basis. I go through my conclusions there, which is also just a broad statement saying I don't envy any of your positions and good luck, and hopefully it'll help you through it. But with that said, let me go through some of the analysis real quick before I get to the meat and potatoes of the actual language change.
Before you get too far, does anybody have any questions? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, this is a complex one, so.
No, that's okay.
All right, so if you would, real quick, take a look at the zoning map, which, Ron, I'm sorry, I don't have the page number for you.
156.
Thank you, ma'am. And we're just going to reference it real quick here. Make sure you get there.
Almost, there you go.
There you go. All right, so 156, like I said earlier, we have 9 zoning districts. I'm not including PUDs because it's a whole separate issue we can talk about at a different time. But standard districts, we have 9 of them, and they're shown across the township there. And then if you, it's going to be hard, reference the zoning district minimum lot analysis, which, Ron, I would believe would be 161.
Hang on, I got to rotate this again.
I think. Perfect. So I color-coded each zoning district the same as the map. So if you're wondering where we're talking about, you should be able to reference the map to your table. And what this does is the current draft language outlines which lots would be eligible, because the draft language states that you have to have minimum lot size in order to have an ADU. So for example, in conservation recreation, there's approximately 223 parcels of land. The district minimum lot size there is 5 acres, and approximately 149 of those parcels meet, meaning 67% of that district would be eligible for an ADU on lot size alone. Now, I say approximate because it's very difficult to understand the difference between net and gross acreage when I'm looking at a static map and I don't have easements drawn on it. So this is worst case scenario or the highest possible volume. If you continue to go down that list, you can see agricultural, lake residential. Our highest percentage of lots meeting district requirements would be moderate and high density. Our lowest would be lake residential and natural lakefront, which makes sense. Most of our lake lots are either old cottages that are oftentimes smaller than our current district minimums. So that is the analysis that the Planning Commission looked at, as well as if you hit the page previous, Ron. When we started this conversation, we said, what is everybody else around us doing? That's oftentimes a good way to see how things are done in practice. So Planning Department put together this neighboring community analysis. At this time, there's 5 communities that allowed ADUs either near us or in Grand Traverse County. So Elmira Township is just to the west of us. Blair, East Bay, Green Lake, Paradise are all in Grand Traverse. Since this was done, East Bay, you can see it's on there twice, they had draft language that has now since been adopted. So that draft language at East Bay is now how they handle ADUs. And Fife Lake has actually also allowed ADUs, and I don't have their particular criteria for them. But what we did is we took the 8 most common regulatory means for ADUs, such as uses, whether it's permitted or conditional, what if they had any size requirement, and put that down for a reference for us to look back on and say, okay, if, how does East Bay handle this, or how does Elmira handle this, so that we can understand maybe what it would look like in practice when it's put in place. So with that said, nice and short and to the point, I will go over the kind of meat and potatoes of the draft language, which the two biggest items I'm going to reference are Table 2.7, which is our table of uses. And before you jump to it, Ron, I'll just summarize it real quick. Basically, it would allow an accessory dwelling unit attached and detached in every district as a permitted use by right. That's currently how this draft language is written. Attached and detached and ADU are all defined in section 3.2, which actually, for a zoning ordinance, is pretty crazy because it actually means what you think it means. Attached is attached to the primary dwelling unit, structurally attached per code office, and detached is detached, which doesn't happen in zoning ordinances ever. There's always complicated definitions. This one's easy. And then the meat and potatoes would be adding section 4.28, which would be for ADUs. We outline an intent, regulations and conditions, and design requirements. I don't mind going through each of these line items one by one. I think I summarized fairly well what these would treat, but I'd be open for questions. Might be an easier way to handle discussion than going through 20 line items.
So question.
Yeah.
When it comes to single family and multifamily.
Yes.
So if we were to put this in all our districts, do all of our districts become multifamily?
No.
Why? I didn't prep him for any of these questions. by the way.
Your districts don't change because you allow a use in them.
But you're
So
allowing.
the nomenclature of we have low-density residential, medium, that nomenclature. Those districts could be called A, B, C, D. The title of the district sometimes helps inform what goes there, but what really informs what goes in a district is a use. So low-density residential doesn't allow duplexes or anything bigger than that. Now, by adding an ADU, can you call it multifamily? You could, but if it's a grandparent living with kids, it's still technically a single-family unit per our definition of the zoning ordinance. But the caveat to that is the term family dwelling unit, single-family, two-family, that has really kind of gone out of use. It needs to be changed in our zoning ordinance. It's in our master plan to address it because the way to define family is difficult. Our zoning ordinance goes through and does define that, but they can easily be challenged because families are looking different than they did, 30, 40 years ago. So it would not make it two-family.
How do we explain to people that now live in a single family that are now going to live in a multifamily area? Explain that, because some people moved into an area that had larger properties and they want to live that way.
Mhm.
And now some people could, especially we have the demand on our lakes as well. So it's trying to figure out what that, explain that is, because, we would have to explain it as a board that we now changed the dynamic of some of our township. I get that not all of it's going to be that way, but let's say you add 300 more homes on the Long Lake
Mhm.
without a sewage system, and all that sewage now goes into the lake.
It wouldn't go without a sewage system. The county health department would have to approve the sewage system in order for it to be approved. But ADUs, there's two categories, right? Attached versus detached. If you have an ADU that's attached, the general passerby may not even know that somebody else lives there. It's going to look like a single-family residential. Per the ordinance, it specifies that it has to resemble the majority of the characteristics in the surrounding neighborhood, which is a very broad way of saying it can't look like a hotel or it can't look like whatever. But if somebody has a detached, you're going to notice it, right? It's not going to be a shed in the back. It's going to be a building with people coming and going and living in it. So you're going to notice it. As far as justifying that all comes down to what the seven of you and the seven planning commissioners desire for the community. So if you want to add that housing option, there's two choices. There's either include attached and detached, or just include attached, or I guess there's three options, or just include detached. So if your fear is that it's going to start looking like two-family dwelling units, you can make them just attached. Because it's going to be hard to justify saying, oh, there's somebody living out back, how is that not two-family? Technically, by the zoning ordinance, it's not two-family, but it sure looks like it. Does that answer your question?
I still have problems with attached, because Now that becomes a duplex by our definitions, correct? Because now you've changed the zoning of that area, it's no longer low density, correct?
You wouldn't be changing the zoning, you'd be adding a different allowed use in that zoning.
Okay, so what would the density be though, if it's low density, single family home?
Density of families or density of units?
Of units.
Technically, your density of units would increase. But, let's say,
Does that need a zoning change in order to qualify as that?
You mean in order not to call it a duplex and call it an
Yes.
ADU?
Mhm.
Yeah, because a duplex would have a separate entrance. ADUs technically wouldn't have to.
Okay, and then.
Attached, yeah, thank you, I don't know who said that, but yeah.
And then also with the, as far as it comes as easements as well to the property, is that going to be an issue too?
Like ingress?
Yeah, ingress and egress, is that going to have to be filed with the county as well? Because I know any driveway permits that you put in has to be approved by them. So by doing this, you're going to have two driveways, most likely.
There's a potential to have two driveways. If a driveway is added, like it's a separate off the road, the county road commission's gonna have to approve that second driveway. If it's a shared driveway, our zoning ordinance qualifies any shared driveway as 2 units. So somebody could have a shared driveway that they don't have to get permission from the road commission to build an ADU on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm just saying that's the procedure in which it would go.
All right.
Are we just in open discussion right now on the topic?
This is,
that-
yeah, I mean, people can't talk over each other. It's going to be
Sorry
respectful.
about
Ask a
that.
question if you have questions for me.
Yeah, if I can
Go
have
ahead.
but first I'd like to thank the planning commission for all the work that's done on this and everything. I sat there for a portion of it. It's a lot of work, and this is an extremely difficult topic to try to navigate for many of the reasons that are being brought up right now, and probably another 100 that we can go into. I want to thank Dan for your review and letter, and largely I share your thoughts that you've outlined for that, so thank you for the time and effort to put that together for all of us to be able to see and review. Some of the pieces kind of starting at the highest level, where we talk about what the master plan is requesting. You know, I think Dan eloquently listed what he could find in the current master plan relative to ADUs. I jumped a step further and try to understand what ends up in a master plan. Obviously, if you go through that process, can be, you know, an interesting process to go through and see how things end up in there relative to what the community wants. I went back and looked at the survey that we had done prior to that, and Ron, do you know how many, or anybody off the top of your head, how many participants we had in that roughly?
I don't remember.
I don't know, Cody, if you.
I don't want to
It's not too relevant. I think something was in the 500s or something, but in any case.
It was a good turnout.
It was a good turnout and representative. I went back to that to try to see what I could find in the survey, and so I'm sorry it's not up on the board, but there was a series of questions. One of those questions I'll go through a couple of them here, but question 4 was, what are the priorities that the township master plan should focus on? And when I went through that, it lists, I believe 14 were listed in the summary sheet. And of the items listed in that, the top items are protect natural resources, protect open spaces, protect existing neighborhoods, number 4, protect view corridors, you know, views being even out your backyard, limit growth, address traffic issues, and then clear down at number 11 is address housing affordability, and down at number 13 is expand housing choices. So it's pretty far down the list in terms of what the priorities were from the township, and this, we've somehow got it right up at the top of the list, and I think we need to look at that. There's another question, number 5, new programs and initiatives, in other words, that the township should be considering. There's 16 of them listed. There's absolutely nothing there about ADUs or anything relative to increasing housing density. Question number 10 from that survey was specific to general housing. Do you agree with the following statement? New homes in the township should be, and there was, I don't have the list here, must be 15 to 16 of them. Starting off, primary conventional single-family homes were top priority within developments designed to protect fragile natural resources, primarily restricted to planned high-growth areas, and this is for additional housing. Allowed to include accessory dwellings is listed at number 5, only in appropriate locations. We've come forward with something that's for township-wide, every single district. So I question that we've maybe gone, I'm not necessarily opposed to ADUs in its entirety. We've heard a couple of comments tonight where there's needs and places for them. My thought is that it needs to be in situations where we're not upzoning every single district, because in essence, you're giving the opportunity for every single district, maybe not to be doubled, but every single district could be upzoned through this process. If there's a place to do it, can we do it so that we don't upzone? There are folks who have enough property where they could conceivably do some things that would not upzone that area in that situation, in that neighborhood. So I think there's a variety of things that really need to be looked at this in depth, and then going into what happens, in the comments that are being made. One of the comments there was to protect existing neighborhoods. To Ron's comment earlier, I don't know how we would, as a board, approve something like this and then have residents from across the entire township come in and say, wait a minute, I bought this home in this neighborhood and this is what it was zoned, and it was 1 acre lots and one home per, and now I've got these things popping up all around me. I mean, I don't think that is protecting the existing neighborhood. So I think we need to look at it through a slightly different lens and see what would make sense reasonably to allow for ADUs to occur. But I think it's a much more restricted and much more surgical and careful manner. Even our surrounding townships, there's not a single township on that list that allows it in all districts. So we're taking a very aggressive step. I would think our first step should be a little more cautious in nature, and actually I would say extremely cautious in nature as we would begin into this area.
Yeah, I'm looking for some of those where it says, is the housing, one of the things, phase 2 after sub-area plans are complete, it says where is supported by community and available infrastructure, but it does say upgrade regulations to allow for greater densities on existing residential properties in locations where appropriate and in distance where it is supported by community and available infrastructure. So I look at some of these and, I agree that housing is really, gotten way expensive, and I think part of it starts where, back to assessing, where we tell people that, our housing have to be increased by the rate of inflation or 5%, whichever is less. And, I watched the last couple of years, we've increased people's property tax, by 5%. And 2 years in a row, it was 5% because the rate of inflation was so high. And I struggle that, when, I know what I paid for my house and know what it's at today before I built a new one, was astronomically compared to what I originally bought it for. And, I think sometimes housing is not just trying to build smaller homes, because I think it costs a lot to build a smaller home, and how do you rent that? I mean, I look at some of our rentals that we're doing, and you compare to rentals and trying to figure it out. And I get where kids are trying to find some place to live, and most of us parents don't want our children living underneath our house anymore. But how do we find some place for them to live that's maybe on the property, or how do we work through that? And I think that's the struggle, is trying to put it. We have high density areas, and how do we do that? And I am a big proponent, and people have seen it in the newsletters and where that, we need to figure out water and sewer, but this would be, if we put water and sewer throughout our community, how many people now could actually do these? Because now we have water and sewer, and I always said if we don't put water and sewer, watch it grow, but guess what it did? Our community grew without water and sewer. Just imagine what it would do if we did. But, we have 20 lakes in our community, and what's that work? What's that going to look like if we start, putting more housing in? I struggle with that without having that there, and, what's it really look like if we start adding more housing? If there's property, and, I hate to see all of our farmland go to housing too. Go ahead.
May I comment on that?
Yep.
So again, not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but just matter of fact. We are going to continue to build single-family residential site condos. Any big parcel of land that's for sale is going to be bought up by a developer and split into some sort of single-family lot, like the parcel behind the fire station, because the reason behind that is, A, it's a highly desirable area to live, so thank you for making it that. But B, if somebody wants to build a duplex or a quad or a tri, the cost of building is going to actually be cheaper where there's municipal water and sewer than there is where there's septic or water. So as a developer, they're going to go for the best ROI. Well, the best ROI out here is going to be single-family residential. So to that point, farmland is going to be continued to bought. The land, vacant land is going to be continued to be bought and developed that way, which is totally fine if that's the vision that you have for Long Lake Township moving forward. But that's the trend we're seeing, even from 2000 till now, that's what's happening with our land. And I don't see anything telling us that it's going to be any different moving forward.
Agreed.
Do you think ADUs would be a dramatic impact to reduce that?
No, not at all. I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think that us passing a land use policy is going to drastically affect the housing market here. It's not possible. We're only 36 square miles out of I don't know how big Grand Traverse County is, much larger than we are. There's 13 other jurisdictions plus the city. So on top of that, it's a tool that some communities are using to address housing. It works well for some. It doesn't work well for others. As you saw in the neighboring community analysis, some of Grand Traverse County townships don't want them. They don't touch them. Some make it conditional so that it's much harder for a person to do so, or it's only in special areas. And to your point earlier, I think Elmira is the only one that allows it across all districts. And Elmira actually allows you to build your principal and your ADU the exact same size on the same parcel. So they are trying to promote growth because they're in an area where growth is good for them. Here, I don't think that is, after reading and living here and reading the master plan, I don't think that's the vision that folks have for the township, is building 2 single-family houses on the same lot. An ADU is just a tool that might allow something that would be a different housing option for somebody to live here. Because otherwise, right now, what we have is single-family, or we have a few rentals throughout the community as far as duplexes and tris and quads go.
Question for you, I mean, as you look at the master plan, the zoning map, we really historically, if you look at the color coding, pretty clearly up in the northeast corner of our township is where the higher density has kind of been put together. That also coincidentally or not so coincidentally is where we're looking at the opportunities for water and sewer that'll most likely first come in and expand into that area, which would help alleviate some of the concerns of some of the environmental impacts of too many septic systems and too close together with all the water. I think, at least historically, unless there's some dramatic reason to change that, I think we've got a solution in that area for that kind of development. Is there a reason you couldn't consider, if ADUs are such a need for certain situations, could you even have a new zoning district that is permitted to go into areas that allows ADUs?
You could, or you could just tailor it to the zoning districts which you think are best suited for it. So traditionally, and it's been this way since 1979, our more dense uses have been in that northeast corner. And the reason is, frankly, it's closest to town. So things like municipal water and sewer are most likely to come there before they're going to be, on West Long Lake. It just has to get there, right? And then the other reason why is there's things like excess nitrates in the ground, and there's some radon issues, and why high density has gone there. Creating a new zoning district is a huge task. I don't know that you would want to do that for a single use like an ADU. I think you just choose the appropriate districts you think ADUs are allowed in, and then tailor it that way instead of broadcasting it across the whole spectrum.
And I guess my reason for that, the fire station. Conceivably, if this were approved tonight, there could be 61 homes with 61 each having an ADU in the back of it. But I would suspect that whether or not the developer wants that, or whether or not the first handful of people who are buying lots in that area would ultimately want that, all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I bought a 1 acre lot because I wanted to have some space.
Right.
Now I look to my left, my right, and behind me, and I've got 6 homes all within that space, all within that space. My thought was if there's a demand for ADUs, maybe there's a development that comes in that allows ADUs, or allows, the possibility of duplexes or whatever, those types of things, in terms of solutions for lower cost housing.
So, you're not wrong. The possibility would be there. The counterpoint to that would be most site condos have deed restrictions or HOA rules or what have you. Problem with that from a township level is we don't enforce HOA rules. So that you're putting the burden on the residents of that to enforce their own agreed upon rules. Most HOAs have something similar to that. The other thing is, just because it's a possibility doesn't mean it comes to fruition. For example, on any single-family residential lot right now, I shouldn't have used that term, any low-density residential lot right now, somebody could theoretically build setback to setback on all four sides and build a house that fits that whole area. Is that practical? No. Is it probably going to happen? Probably not. So assuming that all 61 houses in practice would have an ADU, realistically probably wouldn't happen. But is it possible? For sure. And if the developer decided my best ROI is by putting 2 dwelling units on each of these, they could definitely do that under the current draft language.
And to me, if the density became too quick in certain areas, I mean, there are infrastructure things to be concerned with, whether it's traffic, whether it's, EMS and fire able to get in and take care of. Now there's multiple homes in different locations. There's infrastructure things to think about in addition to the environment, the water, septic systems and all that. I guess I'm just not sure how you can, let me back up. The other main point for me is a neighborhood such as this one going in is to protect the existing neighborhoods. That's a high point when you go through the surveys on multiple pages. I think if you just open it up to what's already existing and say you can, if it's 1 or if it's 100 that come into the township, who wants to be the neighbor that had that happen to? And you thought, I thought I was protected. I thought I knew what I was buying into this in this neighborhood. And 7 people decided to allow for upzoning. I think it's a big consideration. And all that goes away if you're talking about larger pieces of property where you don't cause upzoning. I think there's ways that it can still strategically be accomplished, but just not as broad and as intense and as, difficult that it could be to existing property owners.
So what you're saying is acreage and density levels where it's putting, I think, and I seem to do a lot with you talking, but I think a lot of it is like, it's like, to mass do it, it's like, okay, hey, wait a minute. It's like, I go through the city, and what used to be nice neighborhoods all have these infills. And it's like, is that the same city that we grew up in? And some people don't live here like they used to live here. A lot of people moved here, which is okay. That's what's nice about Traverse City is people get to move here and enjoy what we enjoy. But you start looking at those infills, and do we keep on infilling or do we go out? And you're right, it takes up farmland as it goes out, and how's that work? And, gas getting expensive, people driving back and forth, miles, working jobs. I get that. I think it's just, and they really think they really need to go back and look at this process and what it really looks like and what could affect our community. Because, people have heard me say this, we're just a message to a time and place we'll never know or see. And what's it look like down the road? If we're not sitting here, what's this community look like? And all they're going to go sit back someday and say, that board of 7 people made that change, and now look what we're dealing with. And granted, people could eventually do it around us, and Long Lake could look like this place that's got minimum lot, 1 acre minimum lot sizes and open air and places to live, and but what's that demand around us look like? I mean, do we want it to look like Blair? We don't have all the commercial. Do we want it to look like Green Lake? Do we want to look like East Bay? Do we want to look like Garfield? And, and we have to think regionally on how we do things here, but people move to Garfield for a reason. People live in the city for a reason. People live in Long Lake for a reason.
Sure.
I think I've had quite a few residents ask and talk to me about allowing ADUs, and I can understand their points and their needs, and I agree that it probably would benefit a lot of people. I totally understand fears. I'm hoping we can move forward, and maybe tweak it a little. I'm more in favor of just attached. And for the first time tonight, I started thinking, because the 30 days did kind of bother me, a big turn, and when first time somebody said 90 days, I'm like, oh, why didn't I think of that? But wondering about having a bigger rental window, and then again, the different areas. I really think that it's something we should keep pursuing, and I'd really like to see it work, but maybe not quite how the language is right now.
That's doable. That is one of your options.
Yeah, and that's my
what I would
opinion.
ask if that's, sorry to step in. What I'm hearing is it sounds like from a lot of you is a more measured approach would be more amicable to what you are looking for, and that can be done. The thing that I would ask is if you choose to send the draft language back to the planning commission, be clear and concise on what you're looking for. Even using language like more measured approach, or, make sure it's in high-density areas, or whatever the desire is for how you want it to look like. Please be communicative in that way to help to inform those 7 on how to move forward. To address a couple of the statements that were made, just facts to consider. We have a finite acreage of land. It's never going to get any bigger. It's never going to get any smaller unless for some reason we annex somebody else or big brain things that aren't actually going to happen. We have 36 square miles. That's it. So when we look forward to how we're going to expand, people are going to continue to move here. It's a lovely place to live. I moved back here for that reason. We're going to get increased population. What they're going to do is they're either going to live here or they're going to drive through us. We have 4 of the major corridors feeding Traverse City. They get traveled heavily for those folks who have to drive into town. They are going to continue to be traveled heavily, and they're going to continue to be degraded because of that. Because if you can't afford to live in Long Lake, you're going to move to Elmira. And if you can't live in Elmira, you're going to move over to the next. So we are going to continue to see this growth. ADUs is just a tool that communities are using. There's tens and hundreds of other tools that can be addressed. But just keep that in mind. We will always have a finite number of land, and we will always have more demand as we move forward here. So.
I'd like to just make a couple comments. One is that Cody, I think, has had many of the planning commissioners an outstanding job, but Cody inherited this as a kind of a legacy project, and he's, I think, come at this with a very objective attitude towards this and trying to move forward with, something to address this interest, I would say, with some for ADUs. It sounds like you've all read my ramblings there. I'm entirely opposed to what's being proposed. I mean, this could literally result in about a 70% increase in the number of dwelling units based on Cody's own metrics here. This is way over the top. We are in no way going to be able to provide clear direction to the planning commission on what we want tonight. So this is just way too extreme, though. There's no fiber of my being that can approve this. I think that there is a need, there is a desire for this and a much more measured approach, like the young man that spoke here tonight. The term granny flat sounds good. What happens when granny's not in the picture? It's a rental home. That's it. We have to consider the bad with the good, and we have what, 100-ish short-term rental certificates in play right now.
Yep.
We're talking about potentially 3,782 new rental units in our township. So I would make a motion that we deny zoning ordinance amendment 09-2503, accessory dwelling units.
I'll make a second, and we can go to some discussion, a little more.
All right, we have a motion by Dan, support by Kevin. Any further discussion?
My discussion would be in terms of rejecting this motion, because I think it's not just a tweak that I think that's needed. I do think there should still be some conversation around ADUs, but I think it should be an extremely measured, almost what's the easiest, least offensive way that we could get into this, where we would not be, doing anything negative to a neighborhood or opening things up too wide. And to me, that comes back into looking at density. It comes into looking at acreage, and where there are certain situations where it would almost be like a no-brainer that there couldn't be another home or residence, in the kind of space and what's there, but very controlled and measured. So that's my reason for just turning this down. I don't think it's something that can be tweaked. I think it's something that needs to be really looked at from a new set of lenses. And one other piece I wanted to comment as I read through the surveys, The one question four that was, what are the priorities that the township master plan should focus on? It gave 14 items listed. Then there were some additional notes, and the very first note that came along from that survey said that, this is in the notes, 4 people mentioned a desire for more compact development, allowing for a preservation of more open spaces while accommodating growth. Some, out of those 4, emphasized the need for small footprint homes or accessory dwellings. Others expressed the need for smaller lots and connected neighborhoods. So I think the size and demand and the need seems to be very small. How can we accommodate that and look at it from that context?
So if we deny it, do we need to deny it with referring it back for changes?
No,
Should
those are
that be
two
in the
separate
motion?
options.
Those are
Okay.
two separate
So your denying would be putting a kaput to the draft language that's here. It would, pardon the phrasing, it would die on the table. It would be a dead motion. So what would, in order for you guys to see it again, either the planning commission would have to decide themselves to re-uptake the ADU discussion and present you guys with a different language, or you guys would have to formally direct them to do so, which could be done in a separate motion or what have you.
Okay.
But if you deny it, that means this draft ordinance language no longer has the ability to go through and make a change. They would have to present it either themselves or directed by you.
Okay, thank you.
So I was part of some of that discussion with our previous planner. And, we talked about, how do we do attached or what's that look like? And, because it was like, some of the conversation was, hey, I got a divorce, I live in the same community that my kids live in, I don't have to travel as far, kids don't have to travel as far. So these were some of the same discussions, and I think Lloyd was probably sitting back there with some of these discussions. But I just think that, I just think this, again, goes too far, and I think it needs to be looked at. I think we still need to figure out how it works, if it does, but I really think I think we chunk it off in different pieces or whatever, or different areas, but I think it's looking at our different districts, looking at different acreages, and trying to figure it out. And I know some people have property that are landlocked, they can't do anything with it, and, those are struggles that some people have when they bought their property. But I think a lot of us trying to figure out how that best works and go from there, so. Any other discussion?
I just have a little comment. I really didn't know what an ADU was until I started reading all of this in the last few days. And I'm a granny, and that sounds wonderful to think of my kids taking over my house and, although I don't have that much property, but also the thought of a 1 acre parcel with 2 dwellings on them is just unimaginable. And it's not a bad concept, it's just there has to be many more restrictions than that have been proposed. So I think that my vote would be to say no, as it is, and then if the planning commission wants to come back with something different. It's just too much with what we have. It's just too over the top. So that's my opinion.
All right. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just one. I'd like to keep what we've got now. I don't think it needs any improvement as far as the ADUs, because it does take away from the character of Long Lake Township, I believe. And as been discussed before, that doesn't seem to be a top subject like Kevin brought up. And I just don't think, I think there's other ways around this to make this happen, and I don't think this is the right way to do it. I'd like to keep it just like it is.
Sounds like we need to retouch our master plan. All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none. This is roll call, correct? This is a resolution?
It's a voice vote, actually.
It's voice vote? All right. All those in favor say aye. To deny.
To deny.
So all those in favor say aye to deny this.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. All right. Thank you for everybody's hard work on that process. I know it takes a lot of time, and thank you for everybody's opinion. All right, so we'll go on to second public comment. Same rules apply. And Can't speak on the same run, okay.
Understood. Dennis Wine, 2932 Crescent Shores Drive. I've mentioned it to you, but I wanted to make it more public. I'm concerned about the parking that's happening at this time of year at the Crescent Shores launch. It's blocking a well point many times, and I would hope something can be done. The signs were taken down, or water point, I should say. Those signs were taken down when renovations were done. They were never put back up again. And there's plenty of parking there, and people don't seem to see it, but they sure like to crowd right to the launch. To the ramp.
I don't usually comment when people make comments, but just so you're aware of it, Officer McGurrian has been going to start going down there. We took some of the stuff we figured out is that we still had all the signs that said trailer parking only, and so those are all now covered, so people can park their cars there, because we had to give them tickets for parking in trailer parking only. So they're all covered, so now people can now start parking in those parking lots. So the goal is to give them nice little notes.
Okay,
say
will
they
the
can-
signs be up again for the water?
Yeah, the chief and I'll talk about those water
Okay.
points.
All right.
Do you remember those, chief? So I don't know where they went, but we'll have to figure that out, so.
All right, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks. Any other public comment? All right, hearing none, we have no budget status that I'm aware of.
Nope.
Take care of that. Any Board of Trustee comments? I have three, or four, actually. First, again, I'd like to thank all the work that the Planning Commission did, and hopefully the comments will go well with them and help move that forward. I want to thank the new people who are going to step up and get on that board. The next one is that the Timbers Pavilion, that project is all complete at this point, other than painting, because we couldn't paint when it's cold out. That was the one where a gentleman donated the money. There's now a sign up there for them as well, and then we had to paint the ceiling and do the concrete ceiling, so we spent almost $40,000 of the gentleman's money on that, and the painting will take care of the rest of it. Cedar Run Creek, if you haven't noticed, we did receive a grant from the trust fund, from the DNR trust fund for that, for $133,200 to work through making those trails, so that was a success for some of the stuff we did. We started having those conversations today with helping move that project forward. And then I think it's Thursday, we have, it's hard to believe that we've been in this building for almost a year. So we have our punch list with Grand Traverse Construction to go through for our one-year walkthrough, that they can make sure that things are done, nail pops and stuff like that, so. All right, any other comments? Then we'll adjourn at 7:43. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Just water.
Curse? I thought I heard some mumbling.
I'm going to practice before.
The back, you mean?
I'm sure it's operator here entirely.
You can't.
Oh, it's a new chair. There you go. I don't know.
Luck of the draw.
I think they just put it together, so I don't know what's going on.
How? It is not. And Wanda, how did it start? How did it